right, and we are here again, and we are back again. As always, I'm Matt.
I'm Drew.
And this is the Back Again podcast. This is our sequel podcast where we look at movies from the past. Right now, we are in season 2, and we are doing action movie sequels. And boy, oh boy, do we have a pretty fast and furious episode for you today, as we are doing the follow-up to the 2001 action-driving Vin Diesel movie called The Fast and the Furious. And we are doing the follow-up, which comes out 2 years later, which is called Too Fast, Too Furious.
Very clever.
Very clever. And they let you know right with the title that this is, in fact, the second movie.
It's got two in there twice.
Literally. This movie comes out in 2003, is directed by John Singleton. It has a budget of $76 million, and it has a box office return of $236.3 million. It has a runtime of 1 hour and 48 minutes, only 1 minute longer than its predecessor. And it's starring Paul Walker, Tyrese Gibson, Eva Mendes, Cole Hauser, and Ludacris. Too Fast, Too Furious takes place in Miami, where now ex-police officer Brian O'Connor makes his way up the rank in the underground car racing world. After being busted by the FBI, O'Connor is offered a second chance at a clean record by teaming up with an old friend and working undercover as a criminal driver for a powerful and dangerous drug dealer.
That's exactly what it's about, because it's literally, we have to get the police. I'm the police right now. We have to get this guy who abandoned us and blackmail him into helping us again so that he can leave us again with like a bunch of the drug lord's money.
Well, let's just jump into this and kind of talk about this movie, because that's the basic plot of it. But, you know, just at the start of this movie, we pick up with Paul Walker, who seems to be kind of a man on the run because of the repercussions of the first movie. He gave Vin Diesel the keys at the end of The Fast and Furious, and now he's like an ex-police officer. And, you know, keep in mind, they don't even tell us he's an ex-police officer until about, you know, what would you say, like 15 minutes into the movie? But to start the movie,
later than that.
I mean, when he's in that room with the cops talking. But even before that, you know, they just established that he's living, you know, in like a 1-bedroom underground, and then he gets a call from Ludacris, and it's like, yo, you want to race? He's like, yeah, man, I can use the money.
To be fair, if you did see the first movie, it's very clear that like what his situation is.
Yeah, and it starts off like as actual follow-up to, you know, the first Fast and Furious, and then it doesn't really after that. We'll kind of get into that. Yeah. But just at the start of it, you know, it was nice, you know, seeing Paul Walker and being like, oh, here's the continuation. Like, where's he at now? He's underground. But that mystery is kind of taken away pretty quickly when we see the rest of the movie. Yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about some stuff that we like and that we don't like. And just to kind of be fair to the movie, let's talk about some things that work in the movie or that we like with this follow-up and this sequel. And I'll just kind of start off and I'll say they are riding a high after this first Fast and Furious. So they're able to get at least a very competent director to come out and shoot this movie. They get John Singleton. It's a well-directed movie. Like, by no means is it a bad directed movie. And I think he does, I mean, you know, there's like a lot of wides and stuff, but, you know, he
there have to be for like, you know, with the action that's going on.
Yeah, but, you know, he does a good job. And there's actually some transition shots between the cars racing. And it's cheesy because it's like, you know, early 2000s, but you can even tell that he did it better than they kind of did their first time.
It was definitely a lot of the racing scenes were better shot than the first movie, which I appreciated because that is, you know, what they're going for in this.
And even like the dialogue scenes look good. It's just the dialogue that they're saying. It's not very good.
Well, it was shot in a more dramatic way, I believe, with like lower angles or more extreme angles. And just like, there was a lot more going on, which you could appreciate because you could tell that someone was thinking behind the camera. Yeah. But then at the same time, it's like so exaggerated. And then with the dialogue just heightening everything.
Well, look at that one angle that they do where I believe it's the night where Tyrese and Paul Walker are trying to race these guys to get their cars. These eventually will be the cars that they end up using in the third act. But just the introduction of that scene, they get so low and like right underneath their nostrils. I was like, man, the camera guy on that day must have been like, my back.
They do a lot of stuff with the camera in this, and most of it works.
Well, John Singleton probably said on most of the days, like, no, lower.
Yeah. More.
Yeah. Some other things that I'll say I like about the movie is I do obviously like Paul Walker in the role. I think he's really ridiculous in this movie as far as some of the things that he says, and there's famous things that he says that we all know, like,
I said forget about it, cuz.
But, you know,
my favorite was Brett.
Brett, yeah, he's got a lot of brez. But in general, I just like Paul Walker, and I think he's a good actor. And it's just, you know, it's his franchise, even though a lot of people say it's Vin Diesel's franchise. But he's the heart of the movie. So even though Vin Diesel does not return in the second one, Paul Walker does keep it afloat, I would say, for the most part.
It's not a character that I like. He's consistent, and he's got like a voice. There's not a lot usually plot related stuff I like that happens to him or happens because of him, but he's well portrayed.
Well, the one thing they try to do in this movie is they say, like, because he's not a cop anymore, he's kind of showing his wild side. And, you know, they do this thing where he's driving really reckless on the highway with Tyrese, and they're kind of both showing off. And I think what they're trying to say is that this underground world and also racing cars kind of brings out the real side to Brian O'Connor. Okay. So, you know, when he's driving backwards and flicking off Tyrese, that's supposed to be kind of like, ooh, check out Brian O'Connor now when he's like off the leash. And, you know, he's like, he can kind of do anything.
Does he stay off the leash for the rest of the franchise?
Well, they end the movie with them both stealing money. So I guess in a sense, yeah, because he doesn't get his badge back by the end of the movie. He just kind of.
Well, I mean, like in any of the sequels, I'm like flashing forward.
No, he goes back to being a cop, and then he goes back to being an ex-cop again.
So he does go back to being a cop.
Yeah, but then he goes back again.
Okay.
Literally back again.
Okay.
And I think the last thing I'll say that I can appreciate about this movie is they aren't relying completely on the first one, because they go to a new location, they have new characters. They do copy some of the concepts and themes of the first one in regards to, you know, the partner of Brian being someone that he portrayed in the past, which is Tyrese's character. But also, you know, they come up with a whole new thing. They obviously borrow the undercover cop angle again, but they kind of put a new spin on all of it. So I can appreciate the fact that at least they're telling a whole new story, but then again, they didn't get a lot of the returning cast and crew to do a true continuation, which is obviously what they're going to do for the years to come. But just in regards to this sequel, they're like, you know what, we got one guy back, let's just try to do a new story and make him, you know, interesting to some degree. And I can appreciate the fact that they at least tried to do somewhat of a new story.
And they got some good supporting characters. I honestly think the supporting characters in this one are probably stronger than the ones in the original.
Really?
Well, I don't count Vin Diesel as supporting character because he's main cast.
Okay. Well, the addition of Roman is good, and the addition of Ludacris is good, and I think those are two things that
I was going to say they really...
Yeah, and then that's what people like, and that's why they're going to continue to come back. But just as far as their introductions, yes, they're kind of stronger side characters than some of the side characters in the first one.
I would say a lot of the racers, too, especially the ones that they beat for their cars.
Yeah.
Because they're, like, consistent... Like, they're really side characters, but they show up in a few scenes, and they have a bit of a side story where it's like, the big thing about them was that they end up being super honorable.
If they lose their cars, they just give their cars away.
Yeah,
they have to walk home. It's really weird with the second one because it's more about the racing in a sense, but it's less about kind of the world, the underground world. Whereas in the first Fast and Furious, we see the racing as an introduction to these people into the world and how they kind of live their day-in-day life and what their honor and their code is. Whereas in this one, it's really kind of more about the sport and just about the driving and the cars.
Because you're with completely different characters, so you need that one consistency. So it's like, what can we lean into?
So they really, I think, really lean heavy into the racing and the cars and the, you know, the shots where they're going inside the cars and everything. And the one last thing I'll add that I like is when they do the ejecto-cedo. So they have the bad guys in the cars, and they're going to kill them after the job is done. So, Roman and Brian, they hit their button, and the guys fly out of the seats. But Brian's actually doesn't work, which is ironic. He almost gets shot because his button don't work. But I like that. So is there anything besides what I just said that you want to add that you kind of like about the movie or you think worked?
As far as stuff I liked, I don't know. Like I said, I think it's noticeably better directed. I think it's more ridiculously written. Yeah. So you can take that as a positive or a negative. Didn't really tickle my fancy, but didn't really throw me off either.
We can transition now into some negatives, and you can jump in here whenever you want. But I think the problem with the second one versus the first one is the second one's just not as fun. Vin Diesel makes the first one fun, but I also think that there are more kind of grounded day-to-day scenes that are somewhat more entertaining because of ridiculous dialogue or because of ridiculous situations. But you really feel the location and the people within the location and the day in, day out stuff. Whereas in this one, they really focus a lot on the action and the stakes, but they don't really give a lot of good dialogue around the action or the stakes. So you're just kind of waiting for the action. And it gets to a point where it's just kind of exhausting. It's just boring. It's like I don't really care what we're talking about. Just get back to the ejecto-cedo.
Yeah, this one tries a lot more to be like. This one tries a lot harder to be fun, and it really can only do that in like a few areas. I think in the scenes that demand better direction, that the director can kind of lean into, like a lot of the racing scenes and the action scenes, whereas a lot of the dialogue scenes, I don't know, I just feel like what the director tries to do with the script is kind of mismatched.
Well, everyone's really angry. Like there's so many argument scenes where it's like, shut up, and
they're
yelling.
Like the first one you could do that because like it was all about like, you know, everyone was more directly connected, and so like everyone's actions had more impact.
And there's also secrets to be had.
Exactly.
So when people are like arguing, it's coming from certain vantage points.
It's just like cleaner drama.
Yeah.
And then in this one, it's just like so much forced drama, and it's all about the past. It's all about like shit that happened before the first movie even.
I think about that cop that's like not the FBI agent that returns from the first one, but the main cop who's like running the operation.
Yeah, he's a customs cop.
He's the customs cop, and he is just like the biggest hothead. Like he sends these guys out on a mission, and then he hires them as drivers for this drug dealer. On their first mission, they start driving, and he's like,
they're running. What a surprise.
And they almost blow their cover at the grounds. And they obviously address this because they turn into a big argument. But it's like, why is this cop even doing this in the first place? It's so ridiculous that to where when they bring it up later, you're like, yeah, but like, why? Like, you just hired these guys.
What I kind of like about that is that at least, and it kind of goes back to the tone in general, is that they're ridiculous and heightened, but at least they're consistent. And if he's a hothead, at least he's consistently a hothead in like the same way. And he's always, I don't want to say like acting the way you expect him to, but he's always acting the way his character would.
But he's like a good actor in real life. Like he's in other stuff. So I just think this performance is just so ridiculous to where he's just always ready to like kill these guys or betray them. And I think one of the best moments is when Roman shoots at him. He gets all pissed, and it's like, yeah, he's like, you're gonna blow our cover. And Roman is actually what's interesting about, because I've seen this movie like parts of it when I was younger, but what I actually liked about Roman's character was that I thought he was actually fleshed out pretty well, to the point where he's enjoying this mission because he gets to be his true criminal self. He doesn't have to worry about repercussions, because the more honest in the portrayal he is, the more successful he is at convincing, you know, the bad guys that he's like on their side.
Well, that's why
he gets to have his cake and eat it.
That's why Paul Walker went to hire him.
Well, yeah, but I think
because he knew that he could play the role.
Well, they also went to hire him because they needed another bald ex-convict to be at the side. And I like Roman as the addition. I think his character is actually fleshed out pretty good. His character might be a little better fleshed out than Brian O'Connor, to be honest, because Brian, especially in regards to his relationship with Ava Mendez's character, and I don't even know her character name, and I'm not going to look it up, but their relationship is what like, she's an undercover cop also. She's been working it for a year, but then there's like a scene where her and Brian kiss when they're on his boat, and maybe there's supposed to be some history about him, but
no, there's no history.
But it's like, who's Brian's character in this one besides just kind of a loose cannon flirt, you know?
Yeah, and she I mean, I don't know if you want to go into that right now.
But just take those two attributes about Brian O'Connor, right? Loose cannon flirt, in the sense of he's a wild card. So of course he's going to be an undercover kind of cop because he can make the decisions that need to be made. But he's also a flirt. And we kind of see that in the first one where he's hitting on Mia, right? And he eventually ends up like showing that he's got actual feelings for Mia. Regardless of what they do later down the road with that, you got to keep in mind that this is, you know, only 2 years later, and they don't know they're going to make these other movies. So in the sequel, they just double down on his character to where it's like, well, he's a real wild card. Look how he's driving backwards on the highway and flicking people off and stuff and saying "cuh," and he's a huge flirt. Like he's hitting immediately on, you know, Ava Mendez whenever he can, and it's just like, there's more to Brian O'Connor than that. You don't have to make him. It reminded me of like the Disney sequels where they take a character that you like from the first one and they kind of just make him one or two notes. And obviously his performance is better than that, but it was still kind of like, dude, like, do you have to kiss every girl? Like, I get why girls kiss him, but it's like, come on, like, get some other motivation.
I love the side of it from Eva Mendez's character, where she is Ava Mendez's character, where she's like in deep cover for a year, and then she literally risks her cover just to warn these guys that they're about to die. And she's just like, I mean, she almost does it in this movie, but not quite. Like, just sit by and watch as her, you know, as the drug lord just casually kills people. Yeah. So like, I feel like that's something
she helps. She covers the mouth of like the screaming victims.
Yeah, it's like this. She's known Paul Walker for like a couple days, and it's like she's gonna come out and risk her cover to warn him.
Yeah, well, like that was also a test too, because he tells her,
it wasn't even good intel.
Like
it was a trick.
The intel was a setup to be like, yeah, we're going at the airstrip, and because I believe that's also the same scene where she tells them when they're gonna die that they're also meeting at an airstrip.
Yeah,
right?
Mm-hmm. And that's how Cole Hauser, the antagonist, knows that Eva Mendes betrayed him.
And it makes you beg the question, what were they doing for like a year up until this deal? Like, how many other deals did she allow to go down? And why is it that a year in, this drug deal is the one we're going to bust him on? Like, they don't really state what it is about whatever deal he's doing next.
I think it's casually mentioned, and we might have both missed it.
Is it? I don't think so. I think maybe it's a big one before he takes off. But I mean, keep in mind, he's been doing this for a year with Eva Mendes. And the last thing I'll say about Cole Hauser is it just looks like they put a lot of Miami spray tan on him.
The one part that I did like that Cole Hauser was in was when he was like when he threatened to use the rat on the cop's family if the cop betrayed him.
On your daughter and on your wife.
And it just sounded like it just seemed like he only had the one rat.
Yeah.
So it was just interesting to maybe like follow that rat around and see.
Or you know what? If
all the hijinks that it gets into.
If that rat is so personal to him, that's how they defeat him. Where like Paul Walker, whereas in like Brian O'Connor and Roman are like, we got to kill that rat.
They essentially have to kill the rat to get to Cole Hauser.
It would have been funny if the thing that they had to get in the audition in that envelope was the rat. And then the rat comes back.
That would have been a good setup. That would have been a really good setup.
Good setup and payoff. That's how you do your Lethal Weapon setup and payoff.
Exactly.
If I'm doing it. And I will say this, the final thing I do like about this movie is the addition of Ludacris, because Ludacris also does the soundtrack. And the weakest part about the first Fast and Furious from 2001 is the fact that Ja rules all over that frickin' album. And he's one of the racers in the opening. So way to upgrade, no Ja Rule. And we got some Ludacris, and now we can have some fun. But if we don't have anything really else to say with this, we can probably just jump into the ranking if you want to. So as always on this podcast, we ask 3 questions that lead to a final decision, question, vote, who knows. But the first question is, does it work as a sequel? I think what's hard about this question is you have to ask yourself, what is the first Fast and Furious about? And the first Fast and Furious is not about cars and racing. That is the backdrop for really a dramatic story about friendship and about being on opposite sides of the law, right? So with that context, this sequel is not a continuation of Brian O'Connor, the ex-cop who's now trying to find his way in this world. The sequel is about Brian O'Connor, the ex-cop who gets a second chance to clean his record by doing the same mission that he did in the first one, just with less intel. Like he's not infiltrating the family in this one. He's just becoming like, a driver. He's just becoming an employee to some extent. So he can really only control as much as he can. Whereas in the first one, it's fun seeing him be in character, but also have kind of fun living in this world. So for that reason, I'm going to say it does not work as a sequel. Because if anything, it's almost like a reboot, but it has nothing to do with the first one. And there really isn't any emotional carryover from the first one. So for those reasons, I'm going to slightly say it does not work as a sequel, just because it's not a true continuation of the first movie. And it's almost kind of like a spin-off. It's almost like a television show where it's like, let's just take the main character and put him in a new situation.
I think for me, I think I have to say yes, it does work as a sequel. Because the only thing that I'm going to ding it on is obvious production limitations insofar as not getting the original cast back. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that was something that they were restricted from, not something that was a conscious choice. And if you look at everything else outside of the integral characters like Dominic, Vin Diesel's character, and the ones that are directly connected to him, when you take those out of the equation, I think this sequel still works. Mm-hmm. It sucks that piece is missing, but unfortunately it's against their power to control. So because it wasn't a creative decision and everything else works, I think it's going to get a check from me. It's not like a perfect check, there might be a check with an asterisk. Yeah. But I think so. It works in the direction, in the way that the action is portrayed. I think it tries too hard to be entertaining, but it still works half the time. It's not like it's ultimately failing while trying too hard at the same time. Even though I don't like the Paul Walker character, he's still consistent and he's still well written for what he is. And the side characters, like I said, are better than the original. All
right, so that's going to be a check and an X for that first one. All right, so we're starting off a little teeter-totter here. So the second question is going to be, is it enjoyable / entertaining?
It works as a sequel, but I don't think it's enjoyable / entertaining, regardless if we're including or not including for what it is. Yeah. Because it is still, regardless of what it is still an action movie. And for an action movie, I don't think this checks the boxes that a movie like Lethal Weapon would check. Even though I think it's well shot, or at least better shot than the original. And I can see things working on technical levels. It's still not getting at the real heart of what I think an action movie is, or at least an action franchise. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't seen any of the sequels after this, but I don't think it does that for a while. I think it ultimately takes a few not so successful attempts and maybe one or two failed attempts before it actually gets to the point where they are entertaining for action movies specifically.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, it's really just about how they go about it, right? It's how they go about trying to entertain you. And I think a lot about with the first Fast and the Furious. It's a really small thing because obviously that movie is, fun and ridiculous. And there's like genuinely like good stuff about it. But, they play a lot of music in the first one during a lot of the action and the driving scenes. But when they take place in the final heist where I don't remember the guy's name, but he's like all wired up to the truck and the truck driver's shooting the shotgun. That whole sequence, there's no music that plays during it. It's very engaging. You know what I mean? You actually care about the characters to some extent, and it's just very intense. With this movie, I never got a scene like that.
I can look past the faults of like something technical like production for the sake of if it's a sequel or not, but as far as like pure enjoyability, I can't.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why it gets a check on the first but an X on the second.
Well, it's like what makes it enjoyable, right? What makes the first one enjoyable? And I think it's those kind of things.
It's what's missing from this one.
Yeah, it's those kind of things. It's that balance of seriousness and kind of fun, ridiculousness. And if you think about it, the whole final chase scene with the cops in this one, there's nothing but like playing, so it never feels like there's stakes as it feels like kind of a wacky adventure. I also do not think that this movie is enjoyable / entertaining, but it's very, I gotta be honest, like a lot of these votes are like very on the fence. Like it's only like a point or two that it's falling to an X, but it's just because of how they go about trying to entertain you in this movie, and they really think that like flashiness and quick cuts and I get it, it's 2003, but that first Fast and the Furious, man, that's 2001, and there's that whole sequence where there's no music playing and there's just really high stakes. So the way they try to go about entertaining me, I thought was a little, jingling your keys. I do think there are a lot of aspects that make this movie enjoyable / entertaining, including Roman, the addition of Ludacris, the addition of a lot more side characters, and also the direction of it, like you said, but it just falls short because it's just a little too techno for me.
I think what it kind of boils down to is like there has to be someone with a lot of power on set who genuinely believes like this is a good idea.
Well, they didn't know what it was at the time when they were making it too. Like
the first one or the second one?
The second one, right?
Okay.
Like they had.
Well, I mean, I think at any point in production or at any point in a movie, there has to be someone on set who thinks that this is a really good idea. Yeah. And if everyone else is like, even if everyone else is like, oh, this is just ridiculous, then if that one person who still has enough power can like kind of bring that weight to the project, then it kind of has a good balance. I think that's what Vin Diesel kind of brings to it.
You know who I think does a good job of balancing this movie, though, is the director, John Singleton. I think he
leans too far into the this is ridiculous.
He leans into the ridiculous, but he still keeps everything looks clean, and he does a good job with moving the camera.
He's good, but
so I mean, that's
just finding that balance of like.
There's so many movies that you could see like this where like the director makes a huge difference, because I could show you other like movies like Too Fast, Too Furious where it's just so shaky cam, and you can't even really like everything's like a close up. Whereas with this one, that's the only thing I can appreciate about it is that it is still a competent made movie. But outside of that, I mean, it's going to get 2 X's. So our final question is going to be, does it need to exist? And I don't know if I'm going to shock you at all. I won't say this movie needs to exist, but I'm going to say I don't have a problem with it existing.
So a check or an X?
That's going to be a check. And the reason it's a check is because the story that they're telling is not offensive. I think that they're trying to entertain you in a very like, and like, but it's like I said, it's 2003, so it can be forgiven. But they somewhat try to tell a new story, and they get a competent director, and even though the script and the dialogue is cheesy, they try to put their focus more into the ridiculous like arguing and like just basically one thing that they took away from the first one was like undercover cop speed racing cars. They were like, we're going to take that and we're just going to double down on it with the second one. So there is at least some motivation to what they're doing. It doesn't feel extremely like a cash grab. Doesn't feel like a wasted kind of story. I don't like some of the execution of it, but I'm also gonna be honest, like I don't have a problem with this movie. Like it's still better made than some other action sequels that I think exist out there. So even though I don't think it works as a sequel as a concept, and even though I don't think it's as enjoyable and entertaining as the first one, I don't mind that it exists, and I'm okay with it. So I think that's gonna get a check for that reason.
I don't think it needs to exist. Just because they did what they could with making an entertaining sequel, like I said, it does not mean it passes with flying colors. There's still so much wrong with the movie. Regardless of all of the small little successes that it does have, there is still an abysmally weak villain. And I'll knock some points off for this. I think it is a little too niche for its own good. I think this movie specifically, not the franchise as a whole, but this movie specifically. And like I said, you can have those good side characters. You can have a compelling character in Paul Walker's character, and explore his story in an interesting way, regardless of the constraints that your production has. But that doesn't mean that it needs to exist. I don't treat this question like I'm okay with it existing. I treat it much more like a higher standard. And no, for Too Fast, Too Furious, I don't think this movie needs to exist.
Yeah, the only difference for me with it is that I think you can watch this without seeing the first one. And so it kind of stands on its own to some degree.
That's not the question.
I know, but I keep that in mind when I'm watching it because it's not reliant heavily on the first one. So therefore, when I'm judging it, it's like, well, it doesn't work as a sequel for that very reason. But I'm okay with it existing because it's kind of its own thing. So if you're doing that math at home, it's going to get 4 X's and 2 check marks. It's going to get 1 giant X. But I do think that there is an asterisk next to it. I think we can both agree on that. Just because at the end of the day, you will get some ridiculous scenes that you can laugh at and be like, Jesus, what is going on in this scene? Or at least you can just yell at Eva Mendes and be like, what are you doing here? You're undercover.
Don't break cover.
Yeah. But I don't think we have anything more to say about it. So that's going to be a wrap on Too Fast, Too Furious. As always, make sure you like, subscribe, that you comment below. Make sure you check out Season 1 of the Back Again podcast. And make sure you check out our first episode of Season 2. Not going to tell you what we're going to be doing next for Episode 3, but I think we're both looking forward to it. And outside of that, just make sure everybody stays safe. And Drew, you got anything else to add?
Love you, Paul Walker.
Nice. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time.